Greetings, everyone! It's I, Tentis Dracovin, and welcome again. We're heading back to Golarion. Yes, it's time to go back into the world of the Pathfinder role-playing game and talk about their stuff. We're going to go over a monstrous ancestry, I guess you could call it today, the Ogre. So if you're ready, here at the Dracovin Empire, we're diving in. You, me, ogres, grab your great swords, grab your spellbooks, maybe a few daggers, a few potions along the way, and do a little bit on brand. Maybe trick these creatures. We're going to be talking ogres. So, if I were to be look deeper into ogre beyond just the stuff I'm talking about, and maybe try to pick up some extra details or extra parts of research, where would I look? Well, there are a couple of places you could go into. I mean, yeah, unless you're cooking them up with onions, and they have. That's very, very true. Very true. Classic Monsters Revised for the first edition is a good place to start with, and of course, there's a lot of information on them and their society in the Hook Mountain Massacre, which is actually from the first adventure path, Rise of the Runelords. When it comes to second edition, I would recommend Monster Core. It has updated a few things about ogres from first into second edition, and even from early second edition. So that's kind of my source of information right now. So I definitely recommend checking those all out if you want to dive into some more depths and nuances. But keep in mind, the Monster Core stuff will have some updates from Hook Mountain Massacre. So who are the ogres? They're oftentimes described as foul, brutish creatures, violent, greedy, dim-witted. They're known particularly for their cruelty, unfortunately. The worst of them are horrible sadists, and most of them just disregard smaller humanoids. Even in the best of circumstances, they're going to think of themselves as superior because of their size. You know, they match a strength with viciousness in a lot of times. And yeah, that representation of violence and greed unfortunately goes deep for them. And the worst of ogres, wow, which you can unfortunately find around sometimes. They like to murder, torture, engage in violence of all forms. And when they're doing that, as I said, smaller humanoids, they're the better. They're the ones that they like to use this on. And if you fall captive to them, well, you know, you'll be lucky if they just quickly end you, maybe torture you a little bit and end you. What you should be unlucky about is if they decide, you seem delicious. And so they'll end up keeping you in their larder for the future. And occasionally maybe playing with you. But again, they have this sense of their own fortitude and pain tolerance, so you might not last. And even if you do escape, well, it might not have been a great time. You could be scarred, mentally, physically. And the thing is still, they aren't very bright. There's always the possibility of tricking you. Getting that opportunity to escape. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you won't. So if we look at a ogre, this nice example here, they are a mound of muscle. They are large, huge, muscular. The smallest of them is like a minimum of 8 feet tall, but usually they're around like 10, 11 foot tall. The largest of it can be 14 foot tall, towering over most other humanoids. Though they are humanoid, they do tend to be a little bit distorted. Their faces are oftentimes a little like twisted into kind of hateful, kind of strange appearances. Their legs are kind of stubby for their bodies, massive torsos. They kind of hobble around. Even at that, it doesn't diminish their speed. They have these very long arms that kind of match their torso, that make them even longer than what should be appropriate for something like a human or your average humanoids. And they kind of have like a little like puff or bloat to their face too. Eyes too small for their complex countenances. They have a large mouth, oftentimes broken teeth, and they can rend flesh from bone. Some of the most gutless ones have been known to even, unhinge their jaws to swallow something the size of a halfling whole. That's a feat just to do that. Just to do that, I unhinge my jaw. That's dedication to swallowing a small person whole. It's disturbing, but it's gotta be, and it's again, that fortitude and pain tolerance that they have matches that. Now, stories say that ogres are a result of breeding between greater giants and smaller humanoids, that these mixed breeds eventually became their own species, degenerating into more savage, bestial imitation of both of them. Whatever the pairing that may have happened in ancient times, it's beyond anybody's memory. The thing is, ogres have just been a menace to most places and civilizations for a long time. It's the unfortunate thing that, sure, you can probably find decent examples of them. But the bad examples are really bad, and there's a lot of them. Just an unfortunate thing for ogres. Their children reach full size in about 6 years. Though the childlike glee that a lot of ogres have, smashing things, breaking bones, it makes you question whether they actually reach a mental maturity or not. They live to be about 30 years old, so their physical development being so rapid is required. And it's unfortunate that that is not a actual natural lifespan that we know about. Most ogres meet violent ends before they would get even close to it. They are nocturnal, but the sun doesn't actually damage them or impede them in any way. They just don't like being out in the sun and like being out at night. Simple things like that. Now, ogre society is, in a way, tribal, but it's not the kind of tribes that we know about. It's called a family to them. And the term family doesn't always mean related by blood. It could be a group of them together. So they do have a social aspect to them, but it's very debased. It's a group of them, which could be defined as a couple of different families and stuff. But, this overall group is the family. They're ruled over by a boss. The most powerful, usually the group's patriarch or matriarch, especially if there is family blood in a lot of them, which there could be. It doesn't necessarily need it. They don't need to be related. But whoever's got the most blood, the biggest, the most powerful, that's the one in charge. And others in the group will quickly learn to either obey or be brutalized by not only the boss, but their loyal kin. So, don't mess with them in that. They wreak havoc during the spring months, before summer becomes in its full providence. That's their usually most active time. They descend onto the lands of usually more civilized creatures. They could slaughter entire villages during this time period, in nights of destruction and killing. They will raid neighboring lands for the rest of the year for food and supplies, as well as the like. They'll capture humanoids. The smaller the better. And do all kinds of horrible things to them before taking them out. And, gluttony, sadism, they go hand in hand with these individuals a lot of times. So, yeah. But the thing is, there is some advantages in this case. Your average ogre tends to be impatient and a bit lazy. They don't craft anything. So they steal what they can from others who can't protect them or that they have. They can sometimes form alliances with other creatures like harpies, which the harpies will find too brutish and foolish to torment and not very easy to eat. And they must use them for protection and help them out. If you do find the lair of an ogre, It's usually in places like caves, crumbling ruins, dilapidated shacks that were maybe part of the human settlement or nearby to one, or around animal trails. It makes their raiding easy. The layers will be filthy and just have evidence of everything they've done, from evidence of past captives to left behind treasure on them. In many ways. Now, if you're going to talk on Golarion and who they worship, sometimes ogres will worship Lamashtu, Mother of Monsters. Some will also worship primal deities, things of the moon, of the wild. There are also those that will worship fictitious deities venerated by only a single tribe of ogres, single family, that they only know about and doesn't really exist or have any actual power. They think it does, it's just there's not enough of them to make that an actual thing. Yep. They try. Now, if we talk about in Golarion and where in Golarion you may find them, most mountain ranges tend to have them. Darker shadows, danker caves. Mountain ranges are a very popular place. It's an easy place for them to move into that doesn't really have to worry about it. Usually these are areas that are also, again, wider, less settled. Places like the Mendor Mountains are really popular with them. Untamed places like Ivresia. That place has a bloodthirsty tribe of ogres in all of Vastia, the notorious Kriegs. They dwell in the Hook Mountains and the Iron Peaks. And they use their very cool ogre hooks in very horrible ways. They're supposedly descendants of the Mage Kings of the Wyvern Mountains who ruled there since Aesop Bassalon, but, rumors. There's also said to be a tribe of jet black-skinned ogres in the depth of Long Expanse who are less savagely cruel than their northern Vastian kin. Less barbaric, and they could even sell their services into Mwangi tribes as mercenaries for hire. So, again, subgroups of ogres in different regions might be different. You can see that if you're in the Hook Mountains, the ogres there are particularly horrible. Extra horrible. The Kriegs, really bad. Other places, not as bad as the Kriegs. They're a bad example. Because they're the worst example. There are some in the northern reaches of the Zhou Mountains, in Quadria, and in Tianzi, in the hobgoblin of Kaoling, there is a population of ogres too. And yes, they do particularly have one type of equipment that they do put together themselves. They're ogre hooks. The massive hooks, picks they use to trip and capture prey. They hook them in. But that's an ogre. Pretty short, pretty simple, pretty easy to talk about. An ogre in Golarion, again, is unfortunately pretty bad most of the time. When you're going to find an ogre, you shouldn't necessarily assume it's going to be violent, horrible, and try to do terrible things to you, but be ready for it. It's unfortunate because there are so many of them that are that way. Granted, in certain other regions, as I said, things are different. In Kaoling, the ogres are probably a little bit more civilized. They've probably integrated into the Hobgoblin Nation a lot better than they have in Avastian. In Avastian, they are certainly thrown to the edges of society, and I can't tell you how they are in Quadra. Certainly in some place like the Long Expanse, it doesn't mean they're not going to be cruel or terrible to you, but they might be just as willing to take your gold instead, and have you hire them on. They much just prefer to work for you, get some money, and then move on. Each their own. But you have to know the types that are in that area. It's just an unfortunate thing that your vast majority of ogres are going to be this way. They're going to be the monsters that so many of them are. Many of them have embraced those worst tendencies of their people and basically strengthened them every generation. So, keep that in mind. If you ever meet an ogre, assume the worst. But if you want to be reasonable, you can give them a chance. Just know the region you're in, know the types of ogres you're in, and maybe, like, again, in-game, just do some research. Ask the locals. You know? Oh, there's ogres in the area. What do they do? Are they violent? Do they keep to themselves? Do I have to worry about them? These questions can tell you a lot about the type of family that they have. And if when you see one, you can have that sword out. Or maybe you can have it. Anyway. We'll leave that there. Again, I thank everybody that joined me today. I hope you enjoyed learning about ogres. I've been enjoying talking about these more monstrous ancestries. I will definitely go over more of them in the future. We'll kind of run through them, talk about them, teach you about them. It'll be fun. If you do want to support things, remember just to do the basics. If you're over on Twitch, just follow would be great. If you're joining me on YouTube later on, liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, all those things are great. What's your experience with ogres? I think mine is I played through most of Wrath of the Righteous. Not Wrath of the Rise of the Moonlords. The original adventure pack. The one that has Hook Mountain Massacre. I played through the Hook Mountain Massacre book. There's an entire section where you deal with, well, members of the Creeks. And it goes violent. And, you know, they attack the group. You basically save some people and liberate the fortifications they've taken over. It's an interesting story, but it is very traditional. And it's hard to find that stuff outside those stories. Anyway, if you want to look for the schedule, I put it up on Discord, Twitter, YouTube. Just check that out. That's both my Twitch schedule and YouTube schedule. I do recommend, if you're joining me live, check out Crimson Queen on Wednesdays at 8, playing Pathfinder 1st Edition, and that's 8 in the evening EST, and discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. We talk about news of the week, deeper discussion topics. I have social media, link below, check those out. Discord, Twitter /X. Anyway, I'm going to be going. Probably hang out with Twitch a little bit more, maybe record some more videos. Regardless, though, to those of you out there that have joined me, I bid you all adieu and farewell.